In the wonderful comedy There's Something About Mary, Ben Stiller picks up a hitchhiker who explains his great new product, which is a video called 7-Minute Abs. And he touts it because it's better than the one on the market right now, 8-Minute Abs. You see, it's 7. If you see both of them on the shelf together, which one are you going to pick, 8 or 7? And of course, when Ben Stiller says, what if somebody comes out with 6-minute abs? The hitchhiker goes ballistic, says that's ridiculous. No one can get a workout in 6 minutes. So 5 years ago, I interviewed Martin Gibala of McMaster University, an exercise physiologist who had done an amazing set of experiments on high-intensity interval training and found that he could create a 3-minute workout where people would work out for 20 seconds at a time and then off, and they could get pretty much the same cardio and weight loss results as a typical 30 to 45-minute slow jog. And this made all the newspapers, which is where I found out about him, and kind of left it at that. But then, crossing my newsfeed recently was an article in the New York Times called The 4-Second Workout. And I'm like, is this 7-minute abs or 6-minute abs, or have we finally reached 4-second abs and we're running out of seconds between here and not doing anything at all? And I thought, that's really weird. So I read the article, and I discovered that actually 4-second intervals is a really interesting time because it's enough to kind of turn on fast twitch muscles, but not so much that anybody gets uncomfortable or fatigued. So I wanted to have a conversation with the author of the study, Ed Coyle, a professor at the University of Texas at Austin. And what he taught me not only convinced me that I should be doing 4-second interval training, but it really should become a key piece of most people's exercise regimens, especially people who can't hold on for an hour or 30 minutes, or who you can't even work out hard for 20 seconds. 4 seconds appears to be a threshold that's really doable, and according to this research, has amazing, surprising benefits. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, Edward Coyle, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about, I saw your work featured in the New York Times, I guess it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And the article was updated yesterday, I think, with a link to your published study.
Oh, okay.
Which I think I have to, I'd have to pay like a $1,500 a year subscription fee to some. So I just read the abstract. But even better than the full article is the lead author. So thank you for joining.
Good. Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So the article is, and your work, I guess, is about high intensity interval training and this fascinating question about how little can be useful. And I'd love to just start by finding out like how you got into this line of questioning. Like what's your career trajectory to make you wonder, like how little exercise can we get away with?
Well, I was an athlete in high school and college running, and competitive athletes in swimming and running, almost all of their training is interval training, very high intensity. So those athletes know that if they do repetitions all out and take short rest, that their heart rate will be high, they'll be getting a good cardiovascular workout. And we developed a method where the exercise is only 4 seconds long, where you cycle as fast as you can for 4 seconds. In the 4 seconds of cycling, your RPMs on the bike are going from 0 to 160 RPMs. So you're constantly accelerating. And, we find that if you do that and take a short rest, 15 to 30 seconds rest in there, that, after 10 minutes or doing about 20 sprints, you've gotten a good workout. Your heart rate is elevated, your oxygen consumption is high, and of course, more importantly, your power output has been very high since you've been going as hard as you can for those just 4 seconds. So the key is people say a 4-second workout. Well, it's a 4-second workout repeated a number of times with a short rest. That becomes the key.
And so for athletes like I'm a runner, but not a competitive one, and my workouts generally consist of like an hour of jogging. Right, and so like occasionally I'll do some sprints, but I'm not I don't see myself. I'm not a sprinter. I don't enter short events. So is there a way that the 4-second repeated workout could help someone like me, or is it only for people who have to have that kind of explosive result in their training?
No, I think it really helps. It helps everybody. Now, it's not a training that is just for athletes. It's very time efficient, and when you're doing these sprints, and we do it on a bicycle, we can talk about can you do it by running up a hill or things like that, but we choose the bicycle, stationary bicycle, and in those 4 seconds, you're generating about 1,000 watts of power. Now, when you're jogging, at 8-minute to 10-minute mile pace, you're generating about 100 watts of power. So the power that you're generating is tenfold higher when you're going as fast and as hard as you can compared to jogging. And of course, walking is about 40 watts of energy expenditure. And the reason that very high power output is important is that about half of our muscle fibers are fast twitch and half are slow twitch. And we don't use our fast twitch muscle fibers unless we're going as fast or as hard as we can. So about half of our muscle fibers, and many people who are physically active never get turned on, never get used, never get activated, never adapt, never help them become healthier. So, the key with the higher intensity sprints is just that it's training your fast twitch muscle fibers.
What's the relationship between the fast twitch muscle fibers and health? I can understand that for performance, if you want to be explosive, you need those. But it's for ordinary people who just want to live healthier. How do the fast twitch muscle fibers relate to that?
Well, they act even like the slow twitch in a sense that when we eat food, carbohydrate and fat especially, there has to be a place for that food to go. And it goes into your slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers. If your muscles are not used, they haven't reduced their amount of fuels, then you don't take glucose and fat out of your bloodstream very well. It accumulates, and high blood glucose is type 2 diabetes. And high triglyceride in your blood is hyperlipidemia. And so the healthy response is using as many muscle fibers as you can, and you don't have to use them very long. And by turning them on, they will then be able to clear your blood of glucose and triglyceride, the food that you've eaten in your last meals.
That is fascinating. It makes so much sense. It's so obvious, and I never thought about it. And I'm pretty well read, so I must have never read about it either. Is there, like, where did this idea come from? Is this like an old known thing that I missed, or is this idea that the very short high intervals can help fight against hyperlipidemia and high blood glucose? Is this a fairly new understanding?
I think it is. We haven't come across articles in the literature that linked high intensity exercise to the lowering of fats in your blood the next day. So and people think that you have to use muscle fibers for a long time to really get them activated or to reduce their stores of glycogen and triglyceride. But you don't. You'll use those pretty quickly. The first few seconds of exercise.
Wow.
Well, longer than that. It's longer than the first few seconds. But you'll have activated the muscle fibers.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. And so I'm trying to think about the study that I read about and read the abstract. There's a whole bunch of acronyms like LTV and CAVI and like what have you done studies linking it to for diabetics, this sort of thing, or is this still sort of preliminary?
We haven't done it linking it to diabetics because we've been focusing on fat metabolism, and diabetes is an impairment of glucose metabolism, sugar metabolism.
Gotcha. Although I would imagine that like the theory of diabetes, of at least type 2 diabetes, that makes the most sense to me and seems to be supported experimentally is sort of insulin's resistance, partly due to fat in the muscles. So it would seem like reducing the fat by firing the fast switch muscles could reduce blood sugar by getting it more efficiently into cells that way.
Yes, that's right, and so that happens, and that's one of the health benefits, and when you exercise, then even in the hours after exercise, the same day, you'll have a lowering of your blood glucose levels. So diabetics will show improvement, but they'll also show improvement in their insulin sensitivity. They won't secrete as much insulin to clear their breakfast the next morning, which is a sign that the insulin is working better. So you get some adaptations the day that you exercise, and there are other adaptations that aren't realized until the next day.
Gotcha. Now, I interviewed, I think it must have been 5 years ago, Martin Gabala from McMaster, who had done a lot of work on, I think it was like the 1 minute workout, sort of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off or 15 seconds off, repeated 3 times. And one of the things that journalists were saying about that, like that exercise, it's supposed to be very uncomfortable, kind of miserable for a short amount of time. And you, in the article that you were quoted in the New York Times, as saying 20 seconds is too much for a lot of people. How did you come up with 4 seconds?
Yes, and 20 seconds and 30 seconds is a long time. It's you really suffer. In doing that. I mean, it has benefits. So, we were looking for a less fatiguing way of doing it. And we decided to go with 4 seconds, basically because biochemically, when your muscles break down energy, they first break down when you're going all out. They'll first use the stored chemical energy in the form of ATP and phosphocreatine, and you can produce energy more rapidly by using that chemical energy than anything else by far. So we wanted to tap into the fact that during your first 4 seconds, you really get a good caloric burn. You really are using energy at a very high rate because it's coming from that chemical energy. And then when you rest, you'll be consuming oxygen, you'll be breathing heavily, your heart will be pumping, your cardiovascular system will be stimulated, and you'll be using that oxygen consumption to resynthesize the chemical energy, the ATP and phosphocreatine. So it's a cycle for the most part where, and it's kind of like I have a hybrid car. It runs on a battery and a gasoline engine, and the chemical energy is in the battery, and it gets the car going and moving. But then you deplete that battery pretty quickly, and you have to recharge it. You recharge it through oxidative metabolism. You recharge it by burning gasoline, using oxygen in that process. So what we're doing is essentially analogous to a hybrid car that has a battery that can release energy very quickly, but only for a few seconds.
Gotcha. So what's your understanding of what causes muscles to fatigue? So like I'm working on push-ups right now. I'm trying to get to a number of push-ups that doesn't embarrass me. And the first set I can, do 20, 25. If I rest for long enough, I can then do another set that's pretty equivalent. But if I rest for like a minute, I'm then struggling at 11 or 12. What are the governors, the limiting factors on muscle energy?
Well, one thing that's discussed the most is removing lactic acid from the muscle. So when you're doing these these push-ups or even 20 or 30-second sprints, you'll build up a fair amount of lactic acid, and it takes 10 to 20 minutes for the lactic acid to fully diffuse. Although a lot of it diffuses within 4 minutes. But there are other things that cause fatigue also. It could be the muscle's ability to release calcium that starts the activation. So the idea that all fatigue is lactic acid is too simplistic, and there are probably 5 other major causes of fatigue.
Uh-huh. So one thing that I'd heard about in a podcast, and I'm no expert, was the idea of heat buildup and heat diffusion. Is that something that is in your model as well?
Well, certainly when you're exercising and the muscles are contracting, they're producing heat, and we don't measure heat production in hours. That's a tough thing to do. You have to insulate the whole muscle and put thermistors inside. But 100 years ago, A.V. Hill received the Nobel Prize for studying muscle contraction, and he was able to measure heat in frog muscle and directly measure how much heat the frog muscle was producing under different conditions. So that was how they discovered that the first few seconds of contraction can break down the most energy or produce the most heat.
Gotcha. So when you then brought people into the lab to begin to test this out, I guess your first cohort were athletes?
Yes, maximal power is an important part of athletic performance, and we were using that in athletes to also monitor if they're becoming overtrained. So this bike, we call it the power cycle. because it measures power during cycling. And we've tested several hundred athletes, and so we've been able to describe the profile where top sprinters in the world. We tested several of the best 100-meter men in the world, had phenomenal power, 2,000 watts, over 2,000 watts.
And for ordinary civilians, what is power?
Power is a rate of energy expenditure. So it's how much energy can be released per second or per minute. Technically, the definition is work divided by time. It's how much work you can do in a short period of time.
And work is sort of work is distant, mass and distance.
Yes, distance times. Yes, work is distance, the vertical distance, the moving up of a mass in a given period of time.
Okay.
So, you can also think of power as being when somebody does a vertical jump, they're moving their body weight up about 25 inches. And if you measure how long that takes, you can then calculate how much power they were generating to get the height.
Gotcha. So power sort of would explain the difference between an explosive jumper, someone who can dunk a basketball, and someone who just sort of like gets a couple inches off the ground, if that, from the same motion.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there are some methods to measure power in people jumping, just by using a force plate, and they measure how long you're in the air, how much you weigh, and they can calculate, what your power is. So, in sports like track and field, the power events are, besides the 100-meter sprint, shot putters are very explosive, and they have vertical jumps of 35 inches, and they weigh 300 pounds. High jumpers are very explosive, but also very coordinated and store energy. And, javelin throwers, hammer throwers, all of those, 1 second, 2 second events, you require very, very high power.
Gotcha. So in my mind, until this moment, I kind of thought like to be a shot putter, you just needed strength. So, but like you could have a shot putter who can bench 450 pounds, who might not necessarily be a very good shot putter because they can't do it quickly, right?
Exactly. And I forgot to mention, probably the most powerful athletes, besides the track and field sprinters, are Olympic weightlifters. Mm-hmm. Because Olympic weightlifters will be lifting 200-300 pounds very quickly up to their chest and then over their head. And when they do the snatch, it's one quick motion. They go from the weights on the ground to a big explosive pull, and then they accelerate the weight and catch it over their head. So the snatch in Olympic weightlifting is one of the most explosive moves in athletics. Now, if you asked a bodybuilder or a power lifter somebody who does bench presses and squats and deadlifts, if you ask them to try and lift weights over their head and explode, they can't do it. They're not coordinated enough. It takes practice, but but partly because they they're not able to recruit their muscle fibers in a real explosive manner because they haven't trained it.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the 4 second protocol is not just like it's being, touted in the press as like, here's the minimum for busy, lazy people. But it sounds like it was developed as like the most efficient way to build power, right? It's sort of like for elites, like the elite athletes aren't going to be like, well, I'm too busy to work out, right? They're just looking for the biggest bang for their buck.
Correct. Yeah. I was a little disappointed when the New York Times first published it and they had the headlines, the 4 second workout. And it's like, hey, that's not what it is. And the author of the article knew that too. So I'm not sure who came up with that title. But it's 4 seconds, rest 30 seconds, and do it 20 times. So it's 4 second repeats. That's the key.
So I think in the article it said that when people were starting out, and I guess you had a second cohort of like ordinary folks, like older people with who weren't necessarily in the best of health. What was it like for them to go through this workout? Was it hell? Was it fun? Were they, did you have a high dropout rate or people like begging to stop?
We were for the study that we did on the older adults who were 50 to 70 years old. We recruited 40 subjects and 39 finished. So there was only one dropout, and that was because her husband died. And of the 39 remaining, nobody missed a workout. They loved it. And so we did a survey, anonymous survey, and they didn't feel it was too intense. They said the intensity was just about right, and they enjoyed what they felt were the benefits of being able to move better in walking and climbing stairs and in activities like that, activities of daily living, are what we call it. And many of the subjects, they liked the 4 second sprints because it was a great release. Because you can get on the bike and you're not afraid of hurting yourself or pulling a muscle, and you can just go as hard and as fast as you can, and it helps to to yell sometimes. So we generated a bunch of yellers. And that wasn't just the men. So many of the women too really kind of enjoyed that side effect.
So were they synchronized? So they were all doing the 4 seconds at the same time, or were they staggered after a while?
They were all staggered. We had a few of them doing it 2 at a time, but for the most part they were 1 at a time.
I see.
Never more than 2 at a time.
I see. So it wasn't like a giant room like Orange Theory of people yelling and.
No, because we were monitoring their power for every repetition, and giving them feedback. So, we wanted, and we were collecting some other data during it. So, we couldn't, and we didn't have enough bikes to go more than a few at a time.
Gotcha. I'm just imagining an exercise class based on this. I think I would go to that.
Yeah, it would be fun. We're putting a bunch of power cycles together now, so we might do that and just see what the dynamics are.
So I want to come back to that, but can you summarize the benefits from those 39 completers? What, like 50 to 70, and they went for, was it 3 months?
They went for 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay.
8 weeks, 2 months, and they, one thing which you would expect, their legs increased in mass and size. So they had a significant increase in the size of their quadriceps, and their power, maximal power, went up by about 15%. Their cardiovascular system improved by about 10%. And we measure that by measuring their maximal rate of oxygen consumption during a stress test. And so that improved. So, those two, increasing their maximal power and increasing their maximal oxygen uptake, typically you think that people have to be exercising for at least 30 minutes to accomplish that. But they were exercising only 1 to 2 minutes a day, taking 10 to 15 minutes of total time to accomplish that work. And they were able to improve in improving their power, they're improving their anaerobic ability to produce energy, and their aerobic cardio system improved. So we had both of those improving simultaneously. The point is, as far as increasing leg strength and leg endurance, they didn't have to do cardio on one day and then weights on the other day. They were able to get both those improvements within the short training period.
Wow. And I know you haven't studied them for years and years, but based on science, what would you expect the long-term health benefits to be of increasing muscle mass in the legs, increasing power by 15%, and cardiovascular efficiency by 10%?
Well, as I mentioned before, so much of the health benefits of exercise are gained acutely, just the day after you do your exercise, or the day of, and the day after you do. It's not clear what adaptations that if you train now and then stop training, what will you have a year or 2 years down the road?
Well, what if people just keep doing this? If you have your gym, people can get the power cycle or do something of the equivalent. What would you expect? Like if you were the New York Times writer and you had to come up with a really sexy headline to sell the product, like what would be a reasonable expectation? Like reduced risk of heart disease or dementia? Because I know that leg mass is related to brain health.
Yes, it would be as good as I think it's as good as, and maybe better than, most forms of exercise. So we know all what the health benefits of exercise are in reducing heart disease, reducing the buildup of plaque in the arteries of your heart. Like you said, reducing, even having effects on the brain, and reducing dementia, and increasing your metabolism, so you're less likely to get type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm. So we have a short, efficient workout that people enjoy that has better health benefits than pretty much anything else we've ever studied.
Well, yeah, we haven't studied everything. But health, I would say health benefits that are on par with some of the healthiest types of exercise.
Uh-huh. Gotcha.
That I can't say that if a person runs 45 minutes every day and then does weightlifting on the alternate days, that this would be any better. But the magnitude of improvement we had shown is about the same as what you see with that kind of jogging. So I think it's as good as continuous exercise performed for 40 minutes.
And presumably a bunch of the people in your study at the beginning of the 8 weeks couldn't have done the other things, and now maybe they have more capacity. They can add, they can go for walks, they can feel better riding their bike up and down hilly terrain.
Definitely. They most all of them commented that they were able to move a whole lot better during the day.
Wow. So I know you have a few. You're involved in the Power Cycle company, right? Like you're an advisor and an investor in that. There weren't enough for your lab, so I don't imagine there's a glut of them on the market in the world. Are they available?
Hopefully soon. We're still working on that, but yeah, they'll certainly within the next month or two they'll be available.
Okay, and where can people look for them? Will they be in gyms? Are they available for private individuals? How much do they cost?
Yeah, they're for private individuals, and or anybody can buy them. And hopefully we'll have them in gyms so people can become familiar with them. And the best place is the website, which is powercycle.com.
Okay, gotcha. And what roughly do you think they'll retail for?
Probably about $24.95.
Okay, I assume there's no period in there.
No.
Okay. So for people who want to get started, who don't have room for a power cycle, who don't want to spend $2,500, have you looked at any sort of equivalents in terms of things that might be around the house or just body weight? Like if I wanted to do, like I'm really convinced, like the next thing I want to do after I get off this call with you is do a 4-second 20 rep workout. What could I do with my body and household items and balls and bands and barbells and kettlebells?
Well, it needs to be a large muscle mass activity. So something like running or cycling or swimming would be the best.
Okay.
Now, of course, running is available to all of us, but you have to be careful running, because if you're not used to running and you go out and you do an all-out sprint, I don't know about many people, but you have to be careful not to strain one of your muscles, especially your hamstring muscles. Mm-hmm. In fact, that became a measurement in our study. We had sprinting up a ramp, an incline, and the first subject I saw him start to strain his hamstring, and I said, "That's it, no more. We're not going to include this measurement in the study." So you have less of a chance of straining if you run up a hill. But you won't reach your maximal power going up a hill because you won't be going fast enough. To reach your max power running up a hill, you have to run for about 10 yards into the base of the hill to get up momentum, and then go up the hill as fast as you can.
I see.
So that's one possibility, and that's actually a power test that we do for people. Some people advocate that you can sprint up a flight of stairs, and that's another test that we do. But you have to be very careful because it's easy to slip when you're trying to go as fast as you can up the stairs. You take them 2 or 3 stairs at a time. And
what about on a treadmill or a stepper?
Yes, you could do a treadmill, and I'd suggest putting the grade up, take it to maybe a 10% grade, and and jumping on in that case. But for it to be your maximal, the speed has to be pretty high.
Right. So you'd then have to sort of jump off.
Then you have, yeah, it's not practical. We've done those in experiments, and especially as people become fatigued, and you're jumping on this treadmill that's going at 15 miles an hour. It's tough.
So when I think of the most fatiguing exercise I do, it's burpees. Like, is that a possibility?
I think it might be. I haven't done experiments on it. I've done a lot of burpees in my life, and I just don't know how much real power you'll be generating there.
And what about a rowing machine?
Yeah, a rowing machine is not bad. We've done work with that, and the thing with a rowing machine is that when you pull, the first second and a half, you're pulling. But then there's a break as the line recoils, and you move back forward, and then pick it up again. So to go 4 seconds as hard as you can, as fast as you can, is with a rowing machine is kind of like a stop and go action.
All right, I'm thinking of other things. What about also, I guess, jump squats? Like when you're in the air, you're not doing anything.
Right.
So the idea of the bicycle is that it can be continuous, very smooth, very safe, and when you stop, nothing bad happens. You don't fall on your face.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And an important thing is that if you're using a bike, stationary bike, it has to have a freewheel. What that means is most spin bikes, stationary bikes, are fixed gear. That is, when the flywheel is turning, your legs have to be turning. So you can't stop. So that's why they call them spin bikes, because you can get the RPMs up pretty high, and then you can essentially do very little and still have the flywheel turning your legs around. But when you sprint for 4 seconds, when you do a 4-second sprint, the way we're describing it, at 4 seconds you can stop. You can stop your legs, and the flywheel keeps rolling around, and there's no chance of stretching of muscles and soreness and things like that.
Gotcha. So if I had like a road bike on one of those stands, right, to turn it into a stationary bike, then that would work because it's not fixed gear, right?
Right. But then you'd have to. It's not going to offer enough resistance to elicit anywhere close to your maximal power. So it depends on what kind of resistance machine you have, wind trainer or or some of these newer ones that have motors that resist.
Gotcha. So for the power cycle, does that get calibrated for each individual so it's offering the resistance that they need?
No, we use, we can use one weight of a flywheel, which is the only thing offering resistance, to accommodate people whose maximal powers are anywhere from 500 to 1500 watts. And it's just that the people who are more powerful will get to the highest RPMs sooner. Gotcha. So the nice thing, it accommodates what you can do. It works for most everybody. And when you get to your if you are more powerful and you get to your 160 RPM sooner, well, then you're just spending a little more time going at those very high RPMs, which is advantageous because that's good training for the nervous system, for muscle recruitment.
Okay. So if I have a power cycle and I'm doing this on a regular basis, every day is leg day, right? So is there anything that I should be doing with my upper body similarly? Like there's like things at the gym where you can pedal with your hands or...
Yeah, you certainly can do weights with your upper body. So the regular types of curls and bench presses that people do in the gym. We actually have used this power cycle to measure power in world-class swimmers with their arms. So we have them lie on a bench essentially, and and cycle with their arms as fast as they can, and that was very effective at recruiting the swimming musculature and the upper body musculature.
Right. So when I'm thinking about like things like rowing or even lifting, like when I get to the top, I'm not lifting anymore. I'm holding, and when I come down, I'm releasing. Is there some way to do like isometric so that I'm constantly like for 4 seconds, like my arms are too short, like the distance is too short to work for 4 seconds? Is there any way that I can be under strain for 4 seconds without moving?
Be under strain for 4 seconds. Well, when you're doing a bench press, many of the lifters take 2 to 4 seconds to move it up. And they're using a lot of muscle fibers to do that, but they're not moving at a very fast speed. So it's a different way of recruiting your fast twitch muscle fibers compared to when you're going at your maximal power.
So this is more strength, less power.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the whole term powerlifting is a misnomer because it's not power. They're going very slow. It's strength. Yeah, like you said, it's strength. And Olympic lifting is really the powerful activity.
Gotcha. So what's the future of your research? What are you interested in next?
Well, we're interested in, one is we did a study where we had people break up prolonged sitting, where normally they would be sitting for 8 hours straight or 12 hours straight. And every hour we had them get up and do a few sprints. So they were doing that over the course of 8 hours. And we're looking to see can you get the same benefits if you do sprints every 2 hours. for every 4 hours.
And you're talking about
So,
power cycle sprints.
with the power cycle, 4 second,
Mm-hmm.
they do every hour they were doing 5 sprints, of 4 seconds. So it's 20 seconds of exercise per hour. So yeah, I think you can get by with less than you know uh, 5 sprints every hour. And we also think that the timing of it during the day may make a difference. So, our goal is to help people stay healthy, and finding what the best prescription and the best time for that would be.
Fascinating. And just out of curiosity, so when I do a hard workout, even high intensity or Tabata, typically I'm really sore for the next 2 days. Does that soreness happen with the 4 second type workout?
No, you're doing your Tabatas, I bet, at a gym that has fixed gear cycles.
Yeah. Well, I'd be doing whatever I'm doing with Tabata, whether it's sort of like toe raises with weights, or like anything that's like really hard for 20 seconds. Like I've done CrossFit workouts where for the next week I had to like go upstairs backwards because I couldn't use the muscles.
Yeah, that's delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS.
Uh-huh.
It happens because muscles are being stretched, and when muscles are stretched, some of the fibers break, and you get soreness within 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that doesn't happen with the power cycle or any exercise bike that is freewheeling, because in cycling there's no eccentric exercise. You're not stretching muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Only if you're cycling with a fixed gear bike and there's a lot of energy in flywheel, and it turns your legs around and pulls them around, and that causes soreness.
Gotcha. And for the people who were in the study doing the 4 seconds 20 times, did they have to do like 10 to 20 minutes of warm up first to be safe, or can you just jump right into it? What do you recommend?
We had them do a few minutes of constant intensity light exercise, but it wasn't very much.
Mm-hmm.
What we recommend is that the first 2 sprints that you do, the first one you do at 50% effort, so that's a warm up.
Uh-huh.
And although you're producing 500 watts, it's still a warm up. And then the second one you do at 75% effort. And,
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to warm up your fast twitch muscle fibers. And you don't warm those up until you're going very fast and very hard. So you're never going to warm up your fast twitch muscle fibers by jogging or things like that. So and top athletes know that when you watch the sprinters warm up, they do sprints. Most most top sprinters in the world, runners, never jog
Uh-huh.
at all.
Fascinating. Well, this is really eye-opening, and I'm excited to try to figure out in my own life how I can start to incorporate this and help clients see it. I can't wait for the device to hit the market, and I can't wait for it to become popular enough that you can make it cheaper.
Me too.
But yeah, this is really fascinating stuff, and I imagine it's a sort of workout that people can do when they get older, or when they're injured, or like it's more accessible than a lot of other things that we do for exercise.
I think you're right. As you know, as we get older, we lose muscle mass. So after the age of 30, um, muscle mass declines at 10% per decade. So by the time we reach 70 or so, we have a 40% reduction in our muscle mass. And we did the study with the older adults just to see if this would stimulate hypertrophy, and it did. And I've done another study showing that when you move fast, with your legs and doing leg extension, that the hypertrophy you show, the increase in the size of the muscle, is specific to the fast twitch muscle fibers. So, simply as we get older, we lose muscle. It's twitch muscle fibers, and in order to offset that, we have to move fast. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you move fast when you're older? That's in a safe manner. And that's what cycles are for. Any kind of cycle, arm cycle, leg cycle.
That makes sense. Yeah. So what's your exercise regime these days? Is it power cycle daily, 3 times a week?
I do power cycle at least 5 times a week, and I'm also into doing it in the morning to get me going, to wake me up. Because I've been inactive. When you sleep, you're inactive, and before breakfast and all that. And so I think doing the power cycle early and maybe periodically throughout the day is beneficial. And then 4 days a week, 5 days a week, I'll do a full 15-minute workout on the power cycle. On the other days, at least 2 or 3 days a week, I have my road bike on a trainer, an exercise trainer, so I can ride here indoors. And I like to watch Netflix.
Gotcha. And,
makes the time go by. So I go for about 45 minutes.
Did you, when you were having people work in the lab, did you have music for them?
Not really. With the power cycle exercise, it comes so fast. Every 15 to 30 seconds, you're doing another repeat. That you're totally caught up in that. And we usually do have music in the lab for our continuous exercising studies, but we didn't with the 4-second sprints.
Gotcha. I think it's also important that for the 4-second sprints, that people aren't watching Netflix or listening to podcasts. It's kind of useful to be fully present for that.
Exactly. Yeah, and then I've never tried to watch Netflix when doing the sprints. It would be distracting. It's almost like somebody talking to you when you're trying to concentrate on something, some task, important task.
Gotcha. So for people who want to follow your work, is there any sort of public place? Do we just have to keep reading the New York Times and sifting through sensationalist headlines?
Yeah. I guess you could look at the University of Texas at Austin. Is where I teach, of course, and you can Google Ed Coyle, and that will direct you to my university website.
Okay, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can get there directly. Okay,
But
and
that just lists the studies. That doesn't have the, we don't, we don't, publishers don't allow us to give out the studies.
right, right. Well, I will admit that I tried to find it on Sci-Hub, and could not. And it's apparently it's too new to be at the Duke University where I do have actually legal access. So great, but I think for most people the details are less important than the general principles and protocols, which I guess people will be able to find at powercycle.com.
Yes, that's a good source of the rationale. And all that we do, the statements we make have been scientifically proven, peer reviewed. So, we're not just making stuff up.
Very good. Awesome. Well, Ed Coyle, thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world. It's fascinating, it's inspiring, and thanks for taking the time today.
Good. Well, thank you for your interest. It's great.
All right. Be well.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right. I hope you found that awesome. I have been experimenting with various ways of getting my heart rate pumping in 4 seconds. One of those is a band attached to a belt around my waist, and the other end of the band is stuck into a door frame that's closed and locked, and then I just run, so resisted running away from the door as fast and hard as I can, knees up, pumping my arms, and working really hard to have a very fast cadence for 4 seconds, because what that can do is when I'm done, I can stop. It's not like the treadmill where I'd have to, sort of leap off to keep from getting thrown backwards. I've also been doing, in movement news, did a 10-minute 1 mile jog and then 20 hill repeats for 4 seconds. And honestly, it wasn't quite as strong. I couldn't get as hard or as fast as I could in 4 seconds. Maybe if I had something chasing me, or if I was chasing something, I'd be more motivated. I am really interested in that bike. I've also talked to John Hines of Monkey Bar Gym, asking what he thought, and he was suggesting that the Airdyne bike, which is a stationary bicycle made by Schwinn that has arm levers as well, could also give you a tremendous 4 second workout. I don't know about the fixed gear, whether that would work precisely as Dr. Coyle says, but I'm going to keep experimenting, and I'll let you know how things go. In garden news, got a bunch of catalogs. It's been raining again, so we're going to wait on clearing off the brush and getting beds prepared, but I'm going to start thinking and possibly ordering food. I saw an article, I can't remember if it was might have been in the Atlantic Monthly, about how serious the climate crisis is right now. And so it just inspired me even more to think about growing more food locally. I think we're going to see huge disruption and crop failure. And so the only thing that's going to save it is not giant centralized planting, but lots of people running experiments, planting all sorts of things in all sorts of new ways and places, and seeing how things shake out. So that's part of my mission for that.